Converging Paths.
Hey friends, welcome to the Converging Paths podcast. I am your host, Eric Elnes, and today's podcast is a very special podcast. I have a good friend and spiritual mentor of sorts. He is a maverick rabbi from Portland, Oregon, where some of the best mavericks come from. And Rabbi Brian has a very interesting new book out that I read. I thought was fantastic. So I asked him if he would come on the podcast, and he graciously consented. And that book is called Rabbi Brian's Highly Unorthodox Gospel. Yeah, highly unorthodox gospel. And I will say, I can attest, there are some things that many of our people in the audience might just consider highly unorthodox. He runs an organization, is the spiritual leader for an organization called Religion Outside the Box, and his congregation his group is entirely online throughout the world. And if you're watching the video stream, you're seeing right now Rabbi Brian with a big old box of books going out saying Religion Outside the Box. Now, I wonder how you can do an organization that's called Religion Outside the Box, and yet you are distributing boxes. So we'll have to ask him about that. But in Rabbi Brian's book, he says he wants to do a few things for you and me as readers. He says he wants to tell us everything he knows about love. He wants to empower you and me to be the foremost authority of our spiritual-religious life. Not a religious, not spiritual, spiritual-religious life. We'll have to ask him about that. And he wants to tell us about the benefits of a healthy spiritual-religious life and how to get one, and also discuss the drawbacks as well. And he wants to tell you a little bit, and me, about rabbinical school and the kind of rabbi he is. And he wants to help us unlearn common misunderstandings about God, the Bible, and more. And finally, he wants to apologize to us on behalf of organized religion. Well, that is a tall order. and before we get to Rabbi Brian, I want to remind our audience that the Converging Paths podcast is brought to you by the Eden Tree Foundation, which employs present and emerging technologies for spiritual exploration and growth while fostering interfaith understanding, empathy, and community. And we are also sponsored by Darkwood Brew, who has a special message for us.
Finally, some real news that's cause for celebration. At Darkwood Brew, we're offering 10% off our entire library of progressive small group video resources. Access over 30 series featuring more than 120 frontline thinkers, artists, authors, and theologians with the message of hope in the face of despair. All episodes include leaders' guides and questions to inspire free-range conversations. Sign up today, save 10%, and be ready to download deliciously transformational Bible study materials in minutes. Join the revolution and save some scratch. Darkwood Brew. Cage-free Christianity for the resistance.
Our friends at Darkwood Brew have currently the world's largest collection of small group video resources that are meant to resource Christian pluralism, or what we've been calling also Christianity 3.0, the emergence from Christianity 2.0 to 3.0. Finally, I do want to mention that this particular podcast this evening is also brought to you by Pasadena Beach Community Church, right on beautiful St. Pete Beach, Florida. So without further ado, I'm going to do a little Zoom magic here. I've never done this before.
Hello.
Hey, there you are.
I'm here. Hi.
Hey, Brian. Great to see you.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much, Eric.
How's the Portland weather treating you these days?
Let's talk about something less gloomy, shall we?
Okay. That sounds good. Hey, and I do want, speaking about gloom or doom, or perhaps joy and exuberance, we don't know. I do want to timestamp this. This episode will be released far in the future of when it's being recorded in terms of the audio podcast. So I do want to say that we are speaking to each other before the U.S. presidential election has taken place, just a couple days before it, but so we know nothing about the outcome of that election. We don't know, what will be going on in the Middle East at this time, or Ukraine, or any of these big, huge world events. So we're just going to avoid talking about those issues altogether. We got many interesting things to talk about this evening with Brian. So, Brian, I'm just wondering if we could just kind of cut right to some the meat of this. You say you want to help us unlearn common misunderstandings about God, the Bible, and more. What are some of those common misunderstandings that you run into?
Well, I thank you for asking. Paul has that wonderful quote. He says, "When I was a child, I thought as a child, and when I became an adult, I thought like an adult." And a lot of our misunderstandings about God, we just picked up in childhood. We didn't mean to pick them up, but we did. And an exercise I sometimes like to play with a group of people, I have a whiteboard and I keep track of, I said, there are 37 similarities between Santa Claus and God.
Okay.
And if we can name those out, and there's somebody who lives, somebody who's beyond time and space, somebody who's hoping that to do good for us. There's they live up north. They have small diminutive helpers. There are all these similarities between God and Santa Claus that we get the two confused. And I want to grow people up out of their Santa Claus beliefs in God. Other beliefs in God is this idea that God is Zeus and mad as all heck, willing to smite people with thunderbolts for doing the, oh, you had bacon. That's God. That has nothing to do with God's not an angry asshole. So that's another idea of God. And a third notion of God that we often pick up that I want to help wash out of people's thinking is this idea that God's just sitting there with a clipboard, like, oh yeah, all right, Elnes had a hamburger that he didn't wash his hands before. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to dock him for that. And we have all these childhood notions of the divine, and that they don't help us. They're great for children, but we're adults. My buddy Larry says there's nothing wrong with a fourth grade understanding of the Bible as long as you're in the fourth grade.
Wonderful.
So in the book, I like to I spell these things out here: the ABC, the authoritarian God, the benevolent God, a critical God, ABC of gods, and show people that these are not what we're talking about when we're talking about God. These were our holdovers from our childhood.
One of the things I really appreciate about watching your own videocast is that you have this background also as a high school math teacher, and you were able to really to distill a lot of complicated stuff down to very simple things. Like you're just like you said, the ABC with the authoritarian A, benevolent, and critical.
Critical. You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Yeah, all three.
So do I get a gold star for the evening or?
I'll send you a sticker.
Excellent.
If you'd like.
Excellent. I got a draft of Rabbi Brian's book that actually contains stickers, and you're to put the stickers in different places in the book too. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great. By the way, it is a great read. I just had a tremendous fun reading it, Brian, from cover to cover. I had no problem staying interested and engaged. And you write in a style that I've never seen really replicated by anyone before. It's extremely personal and intimate. And self-revealing and encouraging. And anyway, I just recommend it highly to our...
Can you explain to people who are on the podcast what the book looks like if you're just looking at it?
Yeah, I've got my copy right here. It's called Rabbi Brian's Highly Unorthodox Gospel. And it looks like it could be like a Bible or a gospel, right? And it has a subtitle.
It's tie-dye rainbow.
Yes, tie-dye rainbow. That's right. And has a subtitle: Modern Guide to Compassion, Kindness, and Love for Others and Self. That self part often gets dropped out of the equation, doesn't it? That's something that's important to you to recover.
we don't know how to love each other, and we don't know how to love ourselves. And I struggled with the same things. I still struggle with the same thing, and I really think that we can focus our energies into more love. It's not that, it's ridiculously simple and easy. It's not that complicated. As long as we're more loving and we know what direction that is just to be more loving. People know what that is. It's not laying on the horn when somebody honks at you. It's finding compassion for other people and finding compassion for ourselves when we beat ourselves up, when we feel like we've missed the mark, instead of kicking our own ass, of saying, hey, look at that. I made a mistake and I'm going to forgive myself.
Why do you suppose it's so hard?
And thank you for saying about the style of the book. It's taken me a long time. I've been writing an article a week for 15 plus years, and it's taken me a long while. But I've come to a very a very digestible style of writing. So thank you for enjoying it like that.
You write like you speak, and that takes a tremendous skill, actually, to write like you just speak most naturally. And
The book is also available in audiobook form. And I have to say that was really fun for me to record. And I went on a few tangents and riffs because it was the audiobook. And I was like, hey, I'm the author. I can change the words around if I want to.
That's great. That's great. And not that our purpose is just to sell massive amounts of books tonight, but where can people find that book before we
if you go to shop.rabbibrian.com, that's it. It's not available on Amazon because I want to be able to... if you don't like the book, I want to be able to give you 100% money back guarantee, because I believe in what I'm talking about that much.
Cool. So you said shop at, wait, what was it?
Shop.rabbibrian.com.
There we go. I got mine on Kickstarter. So.
Yes. It's the only gospel that has been funded on Kickstarter, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So why do you suppose it is so hard for, I find it's 30 years as a minister too. It's very hard to help people erase those tapes that seem to be engraved very early on that you are not good enough. You are a disappointment. If people knew who you really are, they wouldn't love you. And I have to deal with my own tapes too. They don't just go away, when you become a minister or a rabbi or have faith or what have you. Why do you suppose those tapes are there, and how have you found what are effective ways to re-record them?
Gosh, I wish I knew why it's so hard for us to be kind to ourselves. And I think about, I used to do this exercise, and I've incorporated it in my writing as well, where I ask people to draw a picture. I said, draw a picture. And people, I'd say 9 out of 10 adults think, oh, I can't draw. My drawings are... And then they start to giggle a little bit if it's a group of people about what their drawings look like. And I say, if a 4-year-old handed you a picture drawn as best as a 4-year-old can draw, would you dare say to the 4-year-old what you're saying to yourself? And the answer is always, no, I wouldn't, but I'm older, I know better now. And then I always chastise, like, if how you treat yourself is proof of how you know better, you don't. Can we be as kind and courteous and encouraging with ourselves as we can be with somebody else's 3-year-old? It's a little hard to do with your own 3-year-old. I think with the artwork, no, that part that's easier to do. But to treat everyone with love and kindness, I think we're not practiced at it. And I do have one theory as to why we do it is our society seems to give extra points to people who are more critical. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to equate criticism with intellectual prowess. Like I'm better than it because I can find fault in it. Well, you're also being an idiot. You're missing. I remember watching a middle school band in a parade, and they were horrible. They were just. There was a middle school band. I don't know what piece of music they think they were playing, but I couldn't discern what the tune was. And I talked with my buddy Larry, and Larry, same guy who said about nothing wrong with the fourth grade understanding of the Bible. I talked with Larry, and Larry said, Brian, sometimes you need to love children more than you love music. And he was absolutely right. We have to learn to love ourselves more than we love criticizing ourselves. It's freakishly not that difficult to start being kind. It does take a little more cognitive load because we're not used to doing it. And when anything goes from rote, this is just what I do, to taking cognitive work to be able to think about it and to do something differently, it's tiring. It's hard to do, but gosh, it's worth it.
And in your book, you have some critical words to say about religion's role in kind of reinforcing those negative tapes, don't you?
I think religion, organized religion, is wonderful, but has made some mistakes, especially with regard to enculturating shame into people. That's an oopsie.
And how does it do that in your view?
How does religion shame people? Well, I think anybody who's listening, they know exactly how religion has shamed them. My question is, and this is a tall order. So what I'm about to say should not be treated lightly and cavalier, but can you forgive religion for having shamed you? That's a really tall order, and it's really an unfortunate thing, when a child has to parent a parent, and it's not the way things should be. But we might have to forgive or some aspects of religion that, forgive me for using this phrase, that knew not what it was doing when it did what it did.
So is it possible to forgive the religion that has done that, or do you need to find some aspect within religion that is not going to keep throwing that at you?
I would say both.
Yeah.
Sure. How do we... It's not easy to do. Look, if I were listening to myself speak podcast, I go, that guy might be a little bit nuts. But I do hold that we can be kind even unto those who abuse us. Look, I wasn't brought up Christian, but there are some beautiful passages, things that Jesus is purported to have said, and to forgive those who trespass against us, that's holy.
Yeah. That's actually, to me, the holiest part of the Christian faith is the forgiveness
Amen.
part. You can write off about 90% of the other stuff if you need to, but that core is a pretty good core. Yeah, that's what has kept me in the faith, even when I've thought about leaving it, is that thing. But of course, forgiveness is not a new concept within Judaism or other world religions too. And what can you maybe I should just back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about your path as a rabbi, because you're not the normal, you're not an everyday rabbi. There's like one Rabbi Brian out there. How did you get what got you into going on that path, and then how did when you got to rabbinical school, like, tell us what happened.
So I think, and I've really been thinking about this in the last few days, and I think I have a different answer than I would have 2 weeks ago. And so let me try out this answer, which is, I grew up, and in my head, the highest priorities were love and reason. And I was captain of the math team in high school. I was very reasonable, very logical. I went to college. I went to the Hillel at college seeking some answers. And at one point, the rabbi there told me, well, one day you're going to ask me for an application to rabbinical school, and you'll ask me for a recommendation. And I told him two words that I can only say one of them without you beeping me out. But I told him something you. And then about a year later, I said, okay, I need to formally apologize, and would you write me a recommendation letter for rabbinical school? And I went to rabbinical school to find capital T truths in Judaism. And I didn't find them. And I always held on to that logic part, and that there had to be, it had to make sense, or I wasn't going to do it. I couldn't just jump into it's absurd, so I believe it. I had to find reason. And I always thought I was going to find capital T truth or drop out of rabbinical school. I didn't find capital T truth. I found lowercase t truths and some beautiful things that are within Judaism. But I didn't find God. I didn't find the answer. So I worked as a rabbi for a few years until the logic broke down. And I couldn't, in any good logic and love, with those being my priorities, I couldn't continue to take a paycheck to preach what I didn't think was true. And even just in the liturgy of saying these are the words of the Torah that come from Moses that were given by God, I couldn't say that anymore. And I had to stop. And I had no other training. 5 years postgraduate rabbinical school trained me to be a rabbi in a congregation, and I just couldn't tolerate it anymore. So I started teaching math, high school math, because they needed high school math teachers. They always need high school math teachers, and had the background for it. And in teaching math, I really came to see the love part, that the more I loved my students. First day of my teaching career, I didn't love my students. I used to yell at my students. I'm embarrassed. I'm less embarrassed now than I used to be. But I yelled at my students. Like, you have to pay attention to math. And they couldn't give a like, who cares? And then when I learned to love my students and to care about them, just following my heart, boy, the classroom management got a lot easier, and they knew that I cared about them, and the more I cared about them, the easier the math was, because our brains are wired for reason and logic. And so I stopped doing Judaism qua Judaism and just started to do religion, and helping people get through life. There was a phrase that I was fond of, which was, there is no lesson in algebra that shouldn't be interrupted for a lesson in humanity. And I would teach my students of, conflict resolution. I would teach them different aspects of love, things that I have learned. And I also taught them the difference between getting drunk on gin. I didn't bring in the gin, but I told them, anything that I could tell them to engage with them. Like, if you're going to get drunk and you drink rum, you're going to be a happier drunk than if you're drinking whiskey. I quickly became most of the kids' favorite teacher. But it was all because I loved them. And I learned to really, and to forgive them when they made mistakes. And then I have a question, Eric, which was, what was the question you asked? Because I think I just went on a total tangent. How I became the rabbi that I am today. Yeah. So I started a blog, and the blog grew with the writings that I was doing, and then I started convening people on the internet, and of Jews, non-Jews, and a lot of Canadians who wanted a place to talk about spiritual, religious topics. Like the most recent conversations we've been having have been about deconstruction and unlearning the things that you thought you knew to be true. Like unlearning that Santa Claus God is not an easy thing to do. That's why we talk about that moment that kids learn the truth about Santa Claus. Unlearning is terrifying,
especially if you
really
think
destabilizing.
Especially if you start veering from the Santa Claus God, that you think that then the God that's got this cosmic smite button is going to come and rain holy hell on you, right?
Right. Nobody changes theology easily or willingly. We change theology when we have a need to change theology, which is when the theology we have breaks down, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying for people to that happen. Oh, and in the meanwhile, I also did a bunch of spiritual direction. I've been working with people individual basis and helping them through these kind of like a doula or a guide of helping them to navigate these. Well, it's like the dark woods. It's helping people through the dark woods.
So what is it that either convinces you or convinces the people that you do spiritual direction with that it's safe to set aside that God? I mean, what is it? What's the proof? Like, is it just a higher form of logic that then discounts the cosmic smite button God and replaces it with a God of love, or is it experience, or what is it that leads you to believe that the God is different from that ABC God?
Well, I think the unlearning the ABC gods, I think that's just reason and rational, and people come to that. But it feels often to them like they have one foot on a canoe and one foot on the dock, and it's gonna go badly unless you take that leap of faith. The other image that I've been playing with recently is the deconstruction can feel like the foundation stones of a building are being pulled out. And the thing that I have said to people is, can you imagine that the foundation stones get removed, but the building stays floating and it's fine? It can be terrifying to remove the foundation stone. Of course it is. It's a foundation stone. But the truth is, all of religion floats.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor. Yeah, that resonates with me, and I think also I know when I start kind of thinking about these things and where you find this God, I found it helpful to just help people just envision what if there was a God who is truly aware of you, maybe more aware of you than you're aware of you, and because of that awareness and despite that awareness, loves you beyond your wildest imagination. Just pretend like that God is true. Now go searching to see if you can find this God, and sure enough, if you can actually hold that kind of God in your mind for long enough, that God seems to be able to break through and then yield actually lived experience of such a God.
What you're talking about, Pascal talks about, and 12-step meetings talk about, which is fake it till you make it. If you can hold on to the beliefs that you are loved until you actually believe that you are loved. Oh my God, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Interesting you bring up Pascal. There's also the Pascals Wager, which I think leads people to hold on to the God with anger management issues. Like if there is truly a loving God, but you, or if there is not a loving God, and you continue to believe in the God with anger management issues, then you're safe, right? But if you don't believe in this God with anger management issues, then you might just fry in hell for all of eternity, what have you. But if God is loving, then whether you believe in this God or not, you won't fry in hell. But again, the risk is like, what if there's that horrible God? Yeah,
it's a terrible thing to convince people of that God, that their mortal soul is in danger.
Yeah.
Oh my, I consider myself very fortunate growing up in Jewish in this culture, that was never perpetrated against me.
Yes.
We didn't have that. Judaism has had a belief in hell and in punishing people, but modern day Judaism does not have this. So I never had to unlearn that
Yeah.
awful idea, and the idea, the parallel idea that we have original sin, that we're all born broken, is such an abhorrent idea. I'd love to erase that for as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, I don't have as big a problem with that as long as you got the sin part defined well. Like, I think sin is just separation, and so we're born separated. Well, duh. I mean, we're in physical shells, and we're like infinitesimally small intelligence, and all this stuff. If you're going to define it as like fundamentally like evil or something, that's a different story. But as I look around the world, it seems like there's no, like, of all the beliefs within religion, it seems like original sin is like the most logically defensible one, in the sense, if you're looking for brokenness. I mean, but not in terms of some sort of irredeemable quality that will lead to hell if you get saved from that. No, definitely not. But I think
what a burden to put on
yeah,
people.
I think, of course, yeah. So Christianity has had to deal with this a lot more forthrightly than Judaism, because Judaism essentially has not taught this as a major belief throughout its history, and Christianity, unfortunately, has fostered this kind of what I call religious terror, spiritual terrorism.
Yeah, the biggest question I get from Christians about Judaism is, what are Judaism's belief in life after death? And after answering the question a number of times, I thought, well, why is this the question I'm being asked over and over again? And I think it's because Christians know, there's this sniff test, that Christians know that this idea of a punitive God who's going to punish you after you've lived for all the mistakes you've made, it just doesn't pass the sniff test. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think actually Jesus told a parable that's meant to, I don't know whether he meant it at the time, but certainly it's applicable in this situation. We have this Pascals Wager, because even though it doesn't pass the sniff test, you think, well, what if there's like a 1% chance I'm wrong? Like 99% chance not wrong. But what if there's a 1% chance? Well, would I risk eternity based on, 99 to 1, like there's 1 out of 100
Infinite
chance.
odds.
Yeah, infinite odds versus 1 out of 100. And I think Jesus tells this parable about these people who are given various amounts of money when the master goes on a trip, and 2 of them invest the money and make more with it, and the other puts it in a hole in the ground and doesn't do anything with it. And it comes back, and the 2 that made money with the money are rewarded and commended, and then the other one is chastised. And the guy says, well, but I thought you're a tyrant kind of a master. I knew if I lost money, I would you'd have my hide, and you're basically saying you're an asshole. I didn't want to part any money from you, and then he says, well, basically, you think me that way? Well, get out of here, get out of my face. And I think that the way I interpret that parable is that the coin of the realm, I mean, he's not talking about physical money. He's talking about grace and in this, this forgiveness, and can the coin of the realm is grace. And can you give grace away, and can you invest grace in others, which then grows more grace. And that if you're going to hold on saying that God's just this cosmic smite button God, you're never going to take any risk. Investing takes risk. So think about those people who invested the grace. They could have been wrong. They could have lost that. But you'd think probably the master would have commended them for at least trying to risk the grace, but the other person had no intention to risk. And so Jesus said, get over yourself, trust to God.
Lose grace.
Yeah, and trust that God is truly a God of grace.
It's a wonderful thing to spend.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love that.
But hey, back to your book. You say you want to tell us everything you know about love, and of course, love has come up in this conversation. But what do you think is maybe the most the concept you have about love that maybe might be the farthest stretch for people, or the one that they may not have come straight to mind?
I'll give you my favorite answer, and I've been thinking about this. If I could summarize the entire book in 5 sentences, I wouldn't have had the need to write the whole book. So,
Good.
so let me try to answer your question in a few sentences, but it really does take me an entire book to explain. I'll give you it's a 4-letter acronym, SAUR. And I think of it as it would be said sour, like a dinosaur, SAUR, SAUR. And SAUR are the 4 parts to a behavioralist understanding of what love is. And so we'll start with the first S, and so we'll go SAUR. And here I am doing my good pedagogy skills, because when I taught high school math in Los Angeles, I had a principal who said, "You're not allowed to give homework." And so I had to learn how to teach so that everything that was taught in class got learned in class. So I'm going to repeat again. The 4 letters are SAUR. And I'm going to loop back, and we're going to do them one at a time. But the first S is seeing. That the first quality of love is seeing. That you can't love somebody if you don't see them. Silence equals death. That ignoring someone is the least loving thing you can do. The first quality of love is seeing someone, is not making them feel invisible, making them feel like they are seen. And we do this with children all the time. As adults will talk to each other about the child. Well, I wonder what Tommy wants, and Tommy's right there, and not being seen isn't a loving thing to do. I think about the cashier at my local supermarket who's got purple hair, and first time I talked to the person, I said, "Oh, look, you have purple hair." Then because the first part of love is seeing, you have to see somebody. Okay, so that's the S. The A is accept. That to love someone means to accept them. Now, to accept them doesn't mean that you approve of what they're doing, but I accept the fact that this person has purple hair. I accept it. Acceptance is the second part of love. So the first part is seeing, second part is accepting, third part is the you. That's understanding. That's having empathy. Is having empathy for someone, saying, "I might not have done what you did, but I see what you did. I accept that's what you did, and I understand that you chose to do what you did. That I have an understanding. I can put myself in your shoes." So those are the first 3 parts of love, SAU, and then finally the last one is the R of respond, and that it's not love if you're not. If I think to myself, "Oh, they have purple hair," it's not quite as good as if I actually respond and let them know that I've seen them and accepted them and understood them, and then the response. So that's my nutshell few sentences about the most important thing I can teach about love if I'm standing on one foot.
That's great. And I can attest you do develop that quite well in the book, and even encourage us to create our own dinosaurs.
Yeah. So in the book, I ask people to draw a dinosaur, and I say, "How bad can your drawing be? There's no such thing as a sour dinosaur." So anything you draw will be an accurate description of will be accurate of that's exactly what a dinosaur. And then I do what we spoke about earlier of asking people, when you look at your picture, can you love it? And I ask people to send me in their own pictures of their drawings, because I want to be proud of them for doing that too. I want them to be proud of what they've drawn, and I want them to know that no matter how they draw their dinosaur, that I'm going to love it.
That's great. I must admit I chickened out on that exercise, even though you
I
kept
appreciate the
encouraging.
honesty. I appreciate the honesty. That's wonderful. And let me just, if I can maybe even do that in real time, is that how I just responded to you, Eric, of saying, "That's fine, that's wonderful," is accepting you, understanding, giving you a sense of understanding, and then saying it. And that this is just, it takes practice to do SAUR all the time. But, I mean, what else are we doing?
Yeah. Well, and I would, to be noted, I would accept if you said, "Hey, come on, Elnes, I'm going to kick your ass if you don't draw this thing for me." I would accept that as loving from you too.
I wouldn't do that. In the deluxe gift deluxe hardcover gift edition, the one that you have that comes with the stickers, there's a sticker for when you draw your love of Sora, you get a sticker.
Yes, yes.
Now, of course, but that's the positive end of it. I don't want to have anyone feel like I'm going to kick their ass.
Yeah.
That's not the right way for me to frame it.
No, I get it. Hey, I want to open this up to questions from our. We have people on Zoom in a moment, but before, so if you're on Zoom live with us, just be prepared if you've got a question or comment you'd like to toss our way or to Rabbi Brian. But before we do that, I was wondering, Brian, if you wouldn't mind reading a section of your book that I think would kind of pertains to our conversation. It's the one. It's the section you write about kosher kindness. In my deluxe,
Can you give me a page number?
That's on
that
174 of my deluxe gift edition book. I don't know what it is on there.
Oh, kosher kindness. I love this section.
Oh, good. I did too.
May I read it?
Please. That's what I'm asking.
It says, New York City, 2022. We're at the dining room table in my mom's New York City apartment. I grew up having our more formal family dinners and all holiday dinners in this room decorated with Polish Cirque posters and built-in wooden cabinets. We're in town to celebrate my youngest niece's bat mitzvah. Emmett, that's my son, is surfing the web on a laptop. I'm working on backing up and restoring my wife Jane's iPhone, which is burning through mobile data. Ira, my mom's beau, sits next to Emmett, fidgeting with the camera. Jane, my beloved, is sitting to my right, helping me. Mom doesn't like sitting. She hovers. I recount the following story about an incident from the bat mitzvah. This is me speaking here. It says, between loud songs and loud games the kids are playing, a woman I don't know gestures to me, my hat, and says, so, Rabbi, you wear a hat. Do you keep kosher? I know how this is going to go. I've had this question before. If I tell her I don't, she'll tell me she does, and she'll leave feeling that she is better than a rabbi. Now, this has happened a lot. So, as I've done this dance before, I don't answer with a simple binary no. Instead, I give a quality answer, one that would teach her something if she were open to learn. I answer, kosher is more about what comes out of my mouth than what goes in. But she wasn't there to learn. She doesn't register what I say. She says on script, well, I keep kosher, and she leaves. At the table, Ira's thick Boston accent joins in. Kid, that's quite a good answer there. The good answer, yes sirree, a thinker. Kosher's more about what comes out of my mouth than what goes in. I see. Thanks, Ira, I say. It's a quote from Jesus, actually, in the Gospel of Mark and Matthew. Most people never hear it, though. Ira plays along. Is that so? Is that so? Yeah, right near the Sermon on the Mount. The best quote about what kosher means comes from what might be considered the least kosher of all sources. Mom interjects. Emmett, look that up. I don't register anything off with Mom's request demand of her grandson, but Jane does. Jane lifts her hands from the table, puts her head in her hands momentarily, shakes her head, and then with a half smile she says, Jesus! She continues with a Jedi's ability to not elicit hostility. Jesus, Elaine, your son is a rabbi and a New Testament scholar. You can believe him. Still exasperation-free, Jane pushes her chair from the table and excuses herself with a pleasant, Oy vey, it's been a fun day. Good night, all. Echoes of good night, Jane, follow. An interesting question, I say to my mom, is whether Jesus said the word unclean or unfit. They are different, after all, and we can't tell from the Greek. Kosher is also about keeping others from feeling shame. The word kosher doesn't appear in the Bible until books written after the exile in Babylon in 586 BCE. The early books of the Bible talk about foods being clean and unclean. The notion of fit for our group's consumption is a later concept. Kosher isn't about things being clean. It's about them being suitable for eating as members of a cohort. About an hour later, I'm still at the table, still working on Jane's iPhone. Emmett, my mom, and Ira have moved on. Jane wanders back in. Did your mom apologize? She asked me. Yeah, later on, she came back in. What'd she say? She said, I wasn't being insulting to you. I wanted Emmett to learn not to take things as facts without checking them out. Jane tells me that's not an apology. I tell her, sure it is. I took it as one. 2 quotes from the author Robert Brault. Life becomes easier when you learn to accept the apology you never got. And today I bent the truth to be kind, and I have no regrets, for I am far surer of what is kind than I am of what is true. A true spiritual religious life is about keeping people from shame. What came out of my mouth, kind words, are kosher, is what is words that are fit for saying.
Love that. That really hit me between the eyes. That second observation about I'm more sure about what's kind than what's true. So I'm going to go with what's kind.
Isn't that a great quote?
It's awesome. Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember that.
I bent the truth to be kind, and I have no regret. I am far surer of what is kind than I am of what is true. And I give that as a lesson to kids who I'm working with towards their becoming a bar, bat, or bar mitzvah. And I give that quote to them, and they can understand it. 13-year-olds understand that quote. I'm far more certain of what is kind than what is true. And I ask whoever's listening to this to take a moment to the next thing you hear and you have the desire to correct the other person. Do you have to do that?
Yeah.
Can you just be kind? And someone's telling a story and they have 75% of the facts right, but they slip and they say it was on a Thursday and it was on a Tuesday. Do you need to correct that? Let them tell the story. Don't interrupt.
It's great. Well, Brian, I'm gonna invite our Zoom audience here. We'll see if anybody wants to ask a question.
Hi, Rabbi Brian. We're two
Hi.
people from Portland. I'm curious, given your experience with the youth, how the kosher kindness. I struggle on social media. I'm only on Facebook, but how do you apply that? What's your advice for applying that there?
To be kind to people?
The kosher kindness applied to Facebook.
Yeah. I think it's basic manners. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it.
Okay.
Tell me if there's a more specific part to your question, my friend.
Just that trying to go ahead and navigate the comments, the fact of my own tendency towards sarcastic humor. So,
Oh, I'm with you, I'm with you. I love sarcasm. It's my native language.
yeah, well, mine too. But
to be prudent and to take and to ask ourselves, is this going to further the conversation or is this going to throw it off? Just having a moment of awareness and just keep being kind. Kindness is never wrong.
I think maybe it's particularly hard if somebody is flaming after you on social media, like you just want to respond with all that fire and
Yeah.
and
Kill him with kindness. I'm so glad that you made that point that you did. It's really making me consider what you said. Thank you so much for your opinion.
yeah, thanks, Alice.
It's not as immediately gratifying. And also, here's one other thing that I think keeps us from being kind. Is it's really fun to flame someone. It's really fun to have moral indignation. It's really juicy to tell someone what you really think about them. And what I'm advocating is that we take that out of our diet. The same way that we would with if a doctor told us that we have to stop salty foods immediately because they're gonna they're bad for us. I think we can do the same with we can definitely have a lower intake and output of salty comments.
Well said,
Oh, I see somebody has a hand up. John Finley.
John.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something for the benefit of other listeners that are new to um, Brian.
Mhm.
I've been a regular for a little over a year, and it has been a really interesting and rewarding experience to participate. And it's another expression of, okay, my mind has been going along the same kinds of directions as Rabbi Brian's has, and to find a fellow in terms of walking the path, doing the journey. Um, it's a comforting setting to be in.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you. John's one of the ones who watches me fiddle with the technology every single week.
Well, thank
And
you.
laughs at and with him as he does.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Brian, we are coming towards the end of our time, and I've got one more question, and then I also want to just open it up to if there's anything that you would like to leave our audience with as well. But we kind of during our conversation, we kind of unintentionally stumbled upon why I am still a Christian because of the particular emphasis on forgiveness and grace. You're still a rabbi, and you've obviously explored widely too, and have had your own frustrations with your own religion, just as I've had frustrations with mine. What keeps you Jewish?
I would say I am Jewish among other things. I am Jewish also because society has defined me as such. I can take my hat off and I will still, I walk through the world the same way that people with, I walk through the world and I am identifiably, I have a Jewish look to me, and it keeps me, there's the outside world that puts pressure on me to remain, that defines me as Jewish. And then also, I love parts of Judaism deeply, which is the ability Judaism allows dissenting thoughts. I think that's just fantastic. I have been asked, why do I still use the title rabbi if I'm so universal as what I'm doing? And my two biggest answers to that are, one, I did 5-year postgraduate work to get this title. I'm going to use it. And two, I forgot the second one. Hold on a second. That I'm going to use that title. Oh, the second one is, I think if there was a book and it was called Brian's Highly Unorthodox Gospel, I don't think as many people would pick it up as Rabbi Brian's Unorthodox Gospel. So
Yeah.
part of it's also marketing.
I think that also that does show that you've seen this, you've studied deeply in this faith to add some credibility. Like you're not just not that there's anything wrong with the fringe element, so to speak, but you're not just simply coming from the fringe. You've never tried the deep dive. You're just coming from the fringe and representing the fringe.
I've earned it.
That's right. Well, any last thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with? This has just been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your coming on.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to one thing that I said, that if this were my classroom, I would say, and here's that thing to practice at home, if you can, which is see if you can withhold just even 2 moments of snarkiness. If you can just withhold 2 moments of snarkiness, you're going to up the amount. You don't need to add in more love. You don't need to add in more doing SAUR, sour. You can get the same results by just being less of an asshole.
Thanks, but I'm going to work on that myself tomorrow, or maybe even tonight.
Right? I promise people practice these skills are right. They will be within the next half hour. You will have the opportunity to practice some of this skill.
There we go. And finally, once again, where we get the book if we're looking for shop at something?
If you go to rabbibrian.com,
Okay, that's easy.
there
we go. That's easy.
my full name, rabbibrian.com, you'll find the book. The book is available.
And
thank you so much, Eric. It's always fun to chat with you. And also, if you do buy the book, you will see Eric's name is listed in the acknowledgments in the back. And it says in it, unbeknownst to him, even unbeknownst to him, Eric Elnes, who has helped me greatly in putting this book together.
Thanks, Brian. Well, once again, it's a pleasure, and definitely recommend the book very highly. And we'll, en route to ending, I want to do what I do every week, is leave you with a blessing, if I may, and with the background of some singing bowls, which were recorded in actually a forest outside of downtown Portland. Here's the singing bowls. Now, my friends, may the Spirit, the Holy Spirit of the living God, made known to the world by many different names, yet astonishingly similar mercies, and to those of us as Christians in Jesus Christ, may this God go before you to show you the way, go above you to watch over you, go behind you to push you into places you may not necessarily go yourself, go beneath you to uphold you and uplift you, go beside you to be your strong and constant companion, and dwell within you to remind you that you are surely not alone on life's journey, and you are loved beyond your wildest imagination. And may the fire of God's blessing burn brightly upon you and within you and through you now and always. Amen. We'll see you next week.